Sixth graders, hope you're doing fine. Today I'm going to read you a story that is called Adventure in Space by Elaine Scott and Margaret Miller. So let's begin. Introduction. For centuries, scientists have dreamt of putting a telescope in orbit. With the success of the first space flights, this dream took a giant step closer to becoming a reality. In 1990, NASA, the United States Space Agency, launched the Hubble Space Telescope. Free from the blur of Earth's atmosphere, this instrument could see further and more clearly than any telescope on Earth. Yet, 2 months after the telescope was launched, it ran into problems. Someone had made a mistake. The Hubble's mirror was a little too flat, and the telescope needed new glasses to help focus light correctly. The wing-like solar arrays, which powered the Hubble's cameras and instruments, seemed to be having trouble too. Their shaking had to be stopped. The gyroscope were also a problem. 3 had already failed. If another one failed, the telescope could not be pointed in the direction that the scientists wanted. The Hubble would be useless. After much thought, NASA decided to fix the space telescope. By building CoStar, an instrument with 10 tiny mirrors, it would give the Hubble the new glasses. It also decided to give it a new camera, WFPC-2, to study objects at the farthest ends of the universe. Now, it just needed to find the right astronaut to do the job. I found 7. Richard Covey would fly the space shuttle Endeavour. His backup would be Kenneth Bowersox, nicknamed Sox. Story Musgrave, Jeffrey Hoffman, Catherine Thornton, and Thomas Ackers would make the spacewalks needed to repair the telescope. Claude Nicollier would operate the robot arm that carried the spacewalking astronauts. All in all, NASA seemed to have a plan. All the astronauts had to do was make the plan work. That would be the hard part. It would also be one of the greatest adventures in space. Early on the third day, Endeavour was rapidly catching up with the telescope. The crew was excited. Just before sunset, they spotted the Hubble. It was a beautiful sight, glowing blue and silver in the fading light. Now it's all eyeballs and hands, Sox said, as he and Commander Dick Covey took over from mission control and fired small burns from the maneuvering rockets. Slowly and gently, the shuttle approached the 43-foot-long telescope looming outside its windows. The rocket burns used fuel, and Ken Bowersox was worried. He knew that there was only one chance to capture the Hubble. If they weren't in the right position, there wouldn't be enough fuel for a second attempt. If they didn't grab the Hubble on their first and only try, the mission would have failed before it began. Claude was ready at the control on the robot arm. Waiting for the right moment, Endeavour glided into place below the telescope. Claude reached out with the mechanical arm and snared it. The telescope was safe, snugly tucked into the payload bay. With relief, Dick Covey radioed Mission Control. Houston, Endeavour has a firm handshake with Mr. Hubble's telescope. It's quite a sight. The first crucial step of the repair mission was over. It was time for the spacewalk to begin. Now the first surprise took its bite. One of the solar arrays was badly twisted. Would it roll up as planned? Story and Jeff would look more closely the next day when the house calls on Hubble excuse me, would begin. Commander Dick Covey summed up the spirit of the crew when he said, "We are ready. We are inspired. Let's go fix this thing." The next day, Kathy and Tom helped Story and Jeff put on their spacesuits. Their very lives would depend on them. Outer space is just that, space. It is a void. There is nothing in it. No oxygen, no hydrogen, no carbon dioxide, nothing. Human beings without protection would die in that environment in a matter of seconds. The air would rush out of our lungs. Our blood would boil, our skin expand. And as if that weren't a terrible enough picture, we would roast or freeze, depending on whether it was day or night. Going out into space is not like going out your front door. Story and Jeff entered and left the shuttle through its airlock, a small chamber with two hatches or doors. Before leaving the shuttle, they had to breathe pure oxygen for about 40 minutes in order to get rid of the nitrogen in their bloodstream. In outer space, nitrogen can cause a painful and dangerous condition known as the bends. After their pre-breath was over, all of the air was pumped out of the airlock. Now it was a vacuum, just like space. The astronauts could safely open the auto door and float into the payload bay. It's an exciting moment when you open the airlock and see the entire universe staring you in the face, Jeff said, as he and Story started the first space walk. For safety, Story and Jeff each attached themselves to the shuttle with a tether, a long metal cable. Moving deliberately and cautiously, Story pulled himself hand over hand along the 6-foot length of the payload bay to the waiting telescope, his feet secured in foot restraints. Jeff got a ride on Claude's robot arm. All went well as they replaced the faulty gyroscope until they tried to close the door to their instrument compartment. A second surprise took a bite. One door sagged slightly below the other and they would not close. Jeff and Story struggled with the bulky doors. Because they no longer matched, the closing bolt will not slide home. The astronauts used their power tools with no results. They talked to Mission Control and even considered leaving the doors slightly ajar. But Story was determined. In a move that was not rehearsed ahead of time, he went to the toolbox and removed a tool called a come-along. The come-along held the two doors together, leaving Story's hands free to push on them and force the closing bolt home. The operation was a success, and Story and Jeff earned a new nickname from NASA, Mr. Goodwrench. Next, the crew turned their attention to the twisted solar array. The solar arrays were designed to roll up like window shades. The undamaged array rolled up smoothly for storage, but the other would not roll up because it was warped. The even couple, Kathy and Tom, would have to throw it overboard the next day before installing the new arrays. Story and Jeff put Kathy and Tom in their spacesuits for the second spacewalk and sent them off to work. Kathy rode the robot arm while Tom floated. The damaged solar array was still producing electricity from the sun, so Kathy and Tom had to work during the orbiting night. They had lights on their space helmets like miners, and from inside the shuttle, Story helped by shining a spotlight on the work area. Still, it was hard for them to see exactly what they were doing. Kathy steadied the large floppy array while Tom unfastened it. The solar arrays were attached to the telescope with electrical connectors similar to the plugs on the back of a computer. Each connector had many small pins that could be easily bent, especially by someone trying to plug or unplug them wearing bulky space gloves. The connectors and bolts were essential to the telescope's life. If they were damaged during this repair, the new arrays would not be installed. Without solar energy, the Hubble would have no electricity. And without electricity, the Hubble would have no light. The team worked slowly and deliberately as Endeavour fell around the Earth. At last, Kathy, riding on the end of the robot arm, was ready for the crucial and dangerous moment when she alone would hold the array. She had to keep it steady and still. If it flopped around, it could hit and damage the telescope. The Hubble had enough trouble. Kathy did not want to break what isn't broken, as Jeff would say. She waited for Tom's instructions. "Come out real smooth," Tom said. 4 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches out. His voice was calm, a gentle coach. Kathy said, "Okay, Claude, real easy." She truly had her hands full as the robotic arm pulled her slowly away from the telescope. "Okay, Katie, I'm letting go," said Tom. "I have it," Kathy answered. The array was perfectly steady, and Kathy exclaimed with delight, "Holy moly, a piece of cake!" But tension mounted again. Everyone was worried about the moment when Kathy would toss the array overboard. It had to be done in daylight, when the entire crew could see clearly. No one wanted the array to hit the top of the Hubble on its way to becoming space junk. Poised on the end of the robot arm, Kathy held it over her head and waited for the sun to rise over Africa. "I think I see sunrise coming, Katie," Tom said. At last, the word came from Story inside the shuttle. "Okay, Tom, tell Katie to go for release." Tom had one request. "Can you just hang 1 second so I can get to where I can watch?" He moved to get a better view, then said, "Okay, Katie, you ready?" "Ready. Go. Gotta go for release," Tom said. The moment had come. "Okay, no hands," Katie said as she let go of the 350 pounds of useless metal and fabric. "There it goes," said Tom. The panel revolved and drifted away. Socks fired a few small burns from the shuttle's rockets to more Endeavour and the telescope out of danger. In the void of space, the maneuver caused an artificial wind. Kathy's voice came over the radio again. "Wonder what it's going to do when it starts flapping in the breeze." Suddenly, as she saw the great orange array flexing over the desert, she exclaimed, "It's almost like a bird, Tom. Look at it." They stared at the incredible sight of a giant bird soaring over the African desert below. The results of all the planning and practice were becoming more and more obvious as each team of astronauts completed their spacewalk successfully. On the third spacewalk, Story and Jeff installed the new camera WPC-2. The critical moment came when Jeff held the camera steady and Story removed the protective cover on the mirror. One slight touch or bump and the mirror could have been contaminated or knocked out of alignment, a catastrophe that would have crippled the telescope. The astronauts' movements were slow, precise, and delicate. Everyone relaxed a bit when that job was finished, and Jeff said excitedly, "I hope we have a lot of eager astronomers ready to use this beautiful thing." On the fourth walk, Kathy and Tom became orbiting eye doctors and slid the refrigerator-sized CoStar into the telescope. Kathy moved the 600-pound instrument with ease, but CoStar was in front of her face. She knew she had only millimeters of clearance, but she couldn't see what she was doing. Once again, her partner became her eyes, and CoStar slid into place without a hitch. Tom hummed while he worked. Later, Claude recalled that sound and said, "It was good to hear Tom humming, because we knew when Tom was humming things were going well." And Tom was humming most of the time. When the Hubble's glasses were in place, Kathy said, "I think everyone can breathe a sigh of relief." Jeff added, "It should be exciting to see what the Hubble can do with the new set of eyeballs." On the fifth EVA, when Story and Jeff were winding up the repairs, a tiny screw came loose and floated away. On Earth, a dropped screw is not a disaster. In space, it could be. It could contaminate the Hubble. Jeff and Claude spotted it, and at the same time, Claude noticed it even from his position inside the shuttle. The famous screw chase, as Story called it, was on. Jeff rode the arm while Claude steered him toward the floating screw, in hot pursuit. Later, Jeff said, "When we were chasing it, I actually felt like a kid riding on a merry-go-round, going after the brass ring, holding on with one hand and reaching out." Jeff got the brass ring, and he and Story finished up their work. They did a final cleanup of the payload bay and re-entered the shuttle, knowing that the Hubble was now ready to go. The time had come to send it on its way. Claude raised the towering observatory from its workbench and released it into orbit once again. As it moved into the blackness of space, its orange solar arrays glowed in the sunset. It will look far into the cosmos and far into the past, she said. It is a time machine as well as a space exploration machine. Looking out the shuttle's window, Tom was wistful. The payload bay really looks empty. In a record-breaking 5 spacewalks, no mission to space had ever had that many. The heroes at STS-61 had accomplished what many said could not be done. It was time for these space mechanics to return to Earth. And this is the end. So I hope you like it. See you in class. Bye.